In today's episode, I'm going to talk about why alcohol is bad medicine for divorce. And I'd like you to listen to this podcast carefully, whether you are a regular heavy drinker, a moderate drinker, or even a non drinker, because you're going to learn some things that are potentially helpful for you now and into the future, and also helpful things for you to know if you might be giving a friend some supportive advice about their substance use. Welcome to the Being Dad After Divorce podcast. This is about how to cope and co-parent effectively through and after divorce, and I'm your host, John Peters. I'm talking to you in this podcast because I've been working with thousands of separated parents for over 30 years as a therapist, a co-parent coach, and a mediator. And so I'm happy to share with you a variety of bits of advice that I have learned over the last 3 decades of working with so many cases so that I can help you cope better, help you parent better, help you co-parent better. And for some of you out there, it might even save you a lot of money because there are better coping strategies with the challenges of co-parenting after divorce than just running to court and spending a lot of money. So let's get into it. In this episode, I'm going to talk about alcohol use. And one quick disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor, so you should not take what I'm saying in here as an evaluation or treatment or medical advice for your situation. But I'm going to share some important things that I think you need to know as you are shaping your pattern of use of alcohol, and also what you can do to keep it from becoming a bigger problem than it might already be for you. Okay. So now, for one thing, I realize that some of you may be listening to this and you are regular heavy drinkers of alcohol. The reality is, in the United States, about 10% of people who drink alcohol meet the criteria for alcohol abuse or alcohol dependence. So about 1 out of 10 people are drinking heavy enough that we think that it demonstrates a problem with alcohol. And if you are a regular and heavier drinker, one important thing to know about alcohol is the way that it acts in the body. And I'm going to say a little more about that here in a minute. But it actually can put you at some medical risk for significant complications to your physical health when you discontinue use, right? So personally, I'm not in the AA model of, go from heavy drinking to cold turkey quitting. I think that if you are a heavier drinker, meaning 4+ drinks per day, and you're going to discontinue or, cut down your use, it's very good advice to talk with your medical doctor and be honest with them about how much you're drinking so that they might decide whether or not they need to give you some medical support while you cut down and quit drinking alcohol in order for you to be at lower risk of having medical complications from discontinuing the alcohol use. So just be aware. The reality is that some people can face medical complications when they discontinue use of alcohol if they're heavier drinkers and have been drinking for a while. One reason that I'm talking about this is that not only have I worked with thousands of separated parents, and I have seen a lot of people reach for alcohol as a coping strategy for the challenges of the stress of the divorce, but I also have worked for years in the inpatient setting, and I've seen people actually have severe medical complications, and I've watched people die, literally die, from having drunk themselves to death as a result of a divorce, right? So I've had patients who've actually not made it because of their alcohol use. So it is a very serious thing to consider. Now, what are our general recommendations about alcohol use with people in general, both divorcing and non-divorcing people? The current standard is no more than 2 drinks a day and no more than 14 per week, right? But we have to get a little more nuanced than that to understand why alcohol is particularly bad as medicine for divorce. One issue with alcohol is that when we regularly take in alcohol, our body becomes tolerant to the alcohol. We adjust to the regular alcohol intake. And what happens, one of the things that happens in your body when you regularly drink alcohol is your body starts overproducing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And the reason for that is your body is basically trying to keep you awake. So the reason that a heavy long-term drinker can drink more in a single session than a novice drinker and stay awake is that the long-term drinker's body is overproducing these excitatory stress hormones that will keep them awake even though they've got more alcohol on board. And the novice drinker might be passed out at the same level of intake. And this is really the mechanism for that withdrawal, because if you're regularly drinking and your body's overproducing those excitatory stress hormones to keep you awake, then when you take away the alcohol, your body continues to produce those stress hormones, and that's what causes those significant medical complications, including things like heart issues and seizures and death. Okay, so part of the issue with alcohol use is that if you drink regularly, the effect of the alcohol is going to slowly wear off, meaning you have to drink more to get the same effect. Okay, because of that adjustment that the body does to start overproducing the stress hormones. Okay. This is one of the reasons it's particularly bad for going through divorce, because if you had, let's say, a pretty rosy life that was stress-free, and you had one particularly bad day and you decided to drink 3 or 4 beers to deal with that, as long as you didn't, go out and drive and get a DUI or something, no big deal, right? You could deal with that one day and kind of fog yourself out by getting intoxicated, and then everything would be fine after that. But divorce is not that kind of stressor. Divorce is not a bad day. Divorce is a bad year, or some bad years for a lot of people, right? Now, the acute, most severe part of the divorce stress may resolve in a few weeks, okay? But even a few weeks, if things were going to be relatively stress-free 8 weeks from now, you really don't want to be drinking enough alcohol daily to try to cover that amount of stress, because you're going to, at the end of the 8 weeks, be drinking way more than you started with to get the same effect, okay? And likely at that point, you would be drinking a dangerous amount of alcohol, given how much you'd have to drink to make up for the lost effect, okay? So chronic alcohol use builds tolerance, okay? And when you're going through high stress, when people try to cover that stress with alcohol, they're going to be drinking more, which even gives the body more of a motivation to overproduce those stress hormones, okay? Also, when you're drinking enough to overproduce the stress hormones, that means you have more stress hormones flipping around in your body, which is going to make you more anxious, make you more subjectively stressed, and make you sleep worse, okay? People who are drinkers sleep worse than non-drinkers, okay? If you look at heavy drinkers, moderate drinkers, and non-drinkers, even the moderate drinkers have poorer sleep than non-drinkers. So we know that alcohol negatively affects sleep quality. And we don't want your sleep to be bad. I'm going to make another episode in this podcast series where we just talk about sleep. But good sleep is important for good mental health. Good sleep is important for coping with challenges in life, okay? You don't cope with stuff as well after a night of bad sleep. And if you have chronic sleep deprivation, you're generally not going to cope as well. And if you're regularly drinking alcohol, your sleep quality is likely to be diminished. And it's going to be a contributing factor to poor sleep quality, okay? So I want you to get good sleep. I don't want you to face the risks of trying to use alcohol to cover your divorce stress, right? So again, if you are a heavier drinker and have been a heavier drinker for a long time, you really should talk to your doctor about your plan to reduce or eliminate the alcohol so that they can give you some expert medical advice about how to manage that well so that you do it safely, okay? Another thing about alcohol is that, in my opinion, alcohol doesn't make parenting better, okay? It just doesn't. I've talked to so many people, countless people, who are adults whose parents got divorced when they were children, and exactly 0 people have told me, my parents' divorce might have been a little better if mom or dad or both of them would have just drank more, okay? Nobody says that. No kid wants their parent to be drunker more of the time. Okay. So if you are drinking too much, and you know who I'm talking about, if it's you, your kid needs you to be sober to be a good parent. That's the reality. Okay. Your kid doesn't need you to be more intoxicated than you are, and your kid doesn't need you to be regularly drinking. Okay. Divorce is actually especially a time to be moderate or reduce your alcohol intake so that you can be the parent that you want to be. Right. Now, I know some of you are saying, yeah, but I need it. I need something to cover my stress. Alcohol seems to be such a reliable, readily available way to take the edge off my stress. I get that motivation. That's why so many people drink during divorce, okay? But there are better ways to pursue that. The advice I'm giving you in this podcast, and that I'll continue to give you about stress management techniques, will be advice that's about healthy, constructive, safer choices for managing your stress. If you're feeling overwhelmed, though, talking to a therapist is not a bad idea, okay? Also, potentially talking to your doctor about getting a low dose of an antidepressant, because those tend to help with stress. They tend to lower anxiety. They help people sleep better sometimes. And so those are pretty safe and effective, and they're used by lots of people and well tolerated. So that's something to consider, and a much safer alternative than drinking too much, okay? So I hope this helps. And if you're yet to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. Please keep checking in, because I'm going to keep posting podcast episodes every week to give you advice to help you cope, parent, and co-parent effectively through and after your divorce, right? And if you're interested in working with me, click the link in the description. You can check out, I've got an online coaching community where I have group coaching calls every week, multiple calls, and you can join that community and get some mutual support from other dads going through divorce, and also join my live coaching communities where I'll give you some advice, give you some support, and answer your questions that you might have about your situation and how you are dealing with the challenges that you're dealing with. So I'll see you in episode 4.